job satisfaction that I have doing the work that I do is second to none. I and I'm not just saying this because you're interviewing me, but I am honestly of the opinion that I can't see myself doing anything else during my working life. That's how comfortable, how well suited I feel in my role in this area of work and in the field of work more broadly. Not many people can say that they have found their niche. And as cliche as it might sound, when work doesn't feel like work, beyond the times where things are a bit stressful, then you're in the right role. My name's Toby Morrison. I'm an independent advocate within the Redbridge team. I have a history of complex needs, and so I have a lot more empathy with the people I work with, particularly under the Care Act, but also, I guess, having been through my own mental health journey and having close family members that have had experiences of poor mental health, I feel like I can show a lot of empathy on the sort of the independent mental health advocacy side of things. That is my first passion when it comes to independent advocacy. I mean, I have definitely found my niche in the last 5 years of working as an independent advocate. Not that whole time hasn't been with VoiceAbility, but that's basically how long I've been an independent advocate for. I had a stroke before I was born. I developed a condition called hydrocephalus, which literally means water on the brain, where the protective fluid doesn't really circulate. So I had a shunt put in, so brain surgery at about 6 months old. I have a variety of other conditions like hemiplegic cerebral palsy, and I'm visually impaired, for example. And there's been a real mix of mainstream and special needs education as I've grown up. So I was in special needs education probably about 20 years ago, reintegrated back into mainstream, went through compulsory education, college and so on, did my BTEC and then went to university, started one degree, found it wasn't for me, did another one, graduated, and then did my postgraduate certificate and postgraduate diploma to qualify as an independent mental health advocate and independent Care Act advocate. And yeah, I guess all of my experiences, the challenges I've faced going through education, the knockbacks, but also the overcoming challenges, has really shaped my worldview on what it means to make sure that you have a voice and that you speak up and that you're empowered and that by extension others are empowered. Because I'm firmly of the belief that if you're empowered as an independent advocate to do your job and to understand what your rights are as an individual and as a professional, you can empower others to have more of a voice around what's going on for them, whether that be in a mental health setting, going through the care and support system in England, looking for employment, whatever it might be. At the point of reintegrating from special needs education back into mainstream, the special school was saying, oh, Toby's comfortable here, he's very able, he's suited to the special needs environment, when my parents were actually saying, look, no, he can go further, he can do more than just the basic level of schooling. And that was one of the best moves I've made in education, was to go from special needs education to mainstream. And then I got to my GCSEs and I had to have brain surgery again because something went wrong with my shunt, and I basically had to do my mocks on a neuro rehab ward, and that was an interesting experience. And around about the time of choosing my GCSEs, I was basically told you can't do sport and you can't do art because you have a physical disability and you're probably going to fail. So I ended up not doing sport and I ended up not doing art. I did different GCSEs, but I guess with where I am now it's less significant, but it was still very much a knockback in my, like, a real knockback to like what I could potentially do and what I could potentially express through art and my ability within sport. But anyway, so I then went on to do my BTEC, National Diploma in Health and Social Care, and I literally had one of my course tutors tell me that as a person with complex needs, I shouldn't be in education, and I put in a disability discrimination complaint against them, but before the complaint could be sort of brought to a close, they resigned. I'm guessing probably out of guilt, but I actually passed my BTEC really well. Decided to initially go to university to train to be an occupational therapist. I faced a world of disability discrimination on that course, ironically. I was told I was too much of a financial strain as a disabled student by my course tutors. And again, I basically gave them the ultimatum of either you have a disability discrimination complaint against you, or you give me APL credits and let me transfer to a course of my choosing. Again, that was another point where I really was very aware of what my rights were. I was very aware of, okay, I'm a disabled person, I have complex needs, but I have rights, and I need to make sure that my voice is heard. And it was a very empowering experience, albeit that I was being discriminated against. At this point, I was the Disabled Students Officer at Coventry University Students' Union. I was re-elected a few times, and yeah, that was a really interesting experience in itself. Observing the incompetence of organisations that are predominantly made up of quote-unquote able-bodied people. So, you know, decisions being made about disabled people by able-bodied people, and those decisions just not working out. I mean, really having to fight for things to be done to create a level playing field. I didn't initially think about training to be an independent advocate, but I had shadowed an independent advocate who coincidentally is in our Warwickshire team. And I was in charity retail management for a while, and that really wasn't working out for me, and so I thought I might give independent advocacy another go. And I mean, I was initially in a bank IMHA role, and then a permanent IMHA and Care Act role, and you know, I've really developed a sense of professional self in the last 5 years, and I think since leaving my undergraduate course, I have had a better sense of self and a better sense of who I am, and that I don't need to fit in with everyone else, that I can be perfectly me, do the job that I love, and not have to conform to any sort of social norm in a way. And yeah, I mean, challenges or not, I think I have developed a better strength of character for those experiences over the years. At the same time that I was shadowing our colleague in Warwickshire for my final year placement, my wife, as she is now, was S136 about 8 times before going into hospital informally. Now, as the legislation currently stands, informal patients have no legal right to advocacy, so there was no one to speak up for her, independent of me and her parents, for some pretty awful stuff that happened to her while she was in hospital. And I think I had the realization that if my wife has been through that experience, I can't let anyone else go through the same, or if they are going through the same, at least I need to be in a better position to speak up for them and to help them understand their rights, to remind them that they are empowered to have a voice and make change and change the course of whatever is going on for them, whether that be asking for leave from a ward or a change of medication or a change of ward. The independent part of the independent advocate role title is to do with the fact that we are independent of services, and the primary role of an independent advocate, whether that be on a statutory or non-statutory basis, is to support people to understand their rights, empower them to secure those rights, and give them a voice in situations that affect their lives. Statutory advocacy is generally speaking advocacy under the Mental Health Act, under the Care Act, and under the Mental Capacity Act. And then non-statutory advocacy, to an extent, also covers NHS complaints, but there is some legislation that supports a framework for NHS complaints advocacy. It's amazing seeing the look of absolute joy on a service user's face when they achieve their goals, whether that be having Section 17 leave into the community from the ward, or being discharged, or whatever might be going on. You know, it's wonderful to see. It really is, and it's humbling when you get amazing feedback from those service users that you have been able to positively impact through the work as an independent advocate. I have definitely found my niche. They were in the process of changing gender, and until I had got involved, they were constantly being misgendered on the wards. They were being misgendered by their care coordinator. They were being misgendered by pretty much every professional that they were working with. I saw them for their true self and did my best to respect which pronouns they wanted to use, and how they wanted to work with me. And at this time I was still training to be an independent advocate. I qualified just before I finished working with this service user. And we had such a good rapport that we could have a conversation like you and I are having now. And we were having this quite reflective conversation, sort of about how things had gone, where we'd started, where we'd got to in terms of their goals. And at one point I remember saying, oh, by the way, this whole time that I've been working with you, I've been a trainee independent advocate, but I just qualified the other day, and the service user turned around to me and said, well, you know, if you hadn't said anything, I wouldn't have known. And it was just such a lovely interaction. And then I worked with them on a non-statutory basis for a little while. And just before that work ended, they produced this handmade card made out of a folded A4 sheet of paper, and they'd written a thank you note, and they'd drawn almost like a self-portrait of themselves, and gave it to me, and were like, well, here is a memory of me, and this hope will hopefully signify the impact that you've had on me as an independent advocate. There was another service user more recently who I'm, still supporting to an extent, but at one point they had done a wonderful painting in art therapy on a ward, and they said to me, oh, by the way, I'd like to give you this painting, obviously within VoiceAbility's gift policy, and they said, I'd really like to give you this painting, and they pulled this painting out of their bag, and they were like, well, look, this represents calm water. And I said, okay, that's interesting, calm water. And he said, no, sorry, this is how calm my mind is for having independent advocacy in my life. Otherwise I would be completely all over the place. And after everything was sort of okayed, I now have it up on my wall, and it's just a great reminder of the impact that our work can have, even on a micro level. That's the great thing about being an independent advocate, is that you may well have an impact on an individual, but when you have an impact on lots of individuals, you then start to create change in a much broader context. And that is what gives me energy to do my job and to carry on the good work that I do. There are two examples that stick in my mind. Both relate to my previous advocacy role. So one was someone who insisted I was on the ward within 10 minutes, otherwise they were going to end their life. I turned up to the ward in under 10 minutes because I happened to be around the corner, and I spoke to them. We set goals, we did an action plan, we worked through that action plan, and I'm pleased to say they achieved their goals. And 6 months later, I received an email from the person saying, because of the impact that you had on me whilst I was in hospital, I'm now doing my national advocacy qualification so that I can do what you do, and so that I can support others in a similar situation. And that was an amazing moment. The other example, quite similar but different in a way, the person had jumped out of the top floor of a burning building and thrown their mattress out before they jumped, and managed to miraculously land on their mattress. They physically survived, but their mental health was in pieces, and so they ended up under section in hospital. Again, we worked together, set goals, achieved goals. I'm being very brief about the advocacy cycle, I can appreciate that. Again, about, 3 months ago, I was on my way to cover one of the wards I currently cover, and I had my name shouted across the ticket hall at Wood Green Tube Station, and this member, I didn't fully clock who it was at first, but this member of staff was sort of flagging me down really quite enthusiastically. Anyway, it turned out to be the service user I had worked with in my previous role, and he said, oh, are you off to the ward? And said the ward name that I'd helped him on. And I said, no, I'm off to cover a different part of London now, I work in a different role. And he grasps my right hand with both hands and shook it so firmly that I'm surprised that my wrist is still attached to my arm. And it was just so wonderful to see that service user having got their life back on track and just being able to pick themselves up and make something of their life after hospital and after all the trauma of being in hospital. So let's face it, I've never been in hospital for my mental health, but I'm as sure as night comes after day that it is an awful experience if you're detained. And I'm just grateful that the independent advocacy role exists so that people have a voice and have the opportunity to uphold their rights. The best things about being an advocate is that you help people to improve the situation they're in. You can help them to understand their rights, and by empowering them to understand their rights, you empower them to make change in their own lives when you're not around as an independent advocate, and you get to make a difference in the world that no one else can, because you are truly on the person's side. You're not advocating a certain viewpoint on behalf of a service. You're not advocating a viewpoint of a accommodation provider or an NHS trust. You are advocating the person's voice, and that is at the forefront of all that you do as an independent advocate. And it's really extraordinary hearing people say, do you know what, thank you for being my voice and helping me to speak up and not giving a viewpoint on the situation other than giving my viewpoint. And that's what gives me the energy to carry on the days that are not so easy in my role. And let's be honest, it's not always plain sailing as an independent advocate. There are some very tough days. There's a lot of tough stuff that you witness, that you hear. But ultimately, the job satisfaction that I have doing the work that I do is second to none. I can and I'm not just saying this because you're interviewing me, but I am honestly of the opinion that I can't see myself doing anything else during my working life. That's how comfortable, how well suited I feel in my role in this area of work and in the field of work more broadly. Not many people can say that they have found their niche. And as cliche as it might sound, when work doesn't feel like work, beyond the times where things are a bit stressful, then you're in the right role. I think if I was to speak to my younger self, I would say, persevere, don't give up, even if you get knocked back because of the experiences you've had, and just aim high and do the best you can do.
That's exactly what you've done, Toby.
I try my best.